All right, here we are again. Good morning. Good morning to our thin texters. As you know, my name is David Rendelstein. Some people call me Dr. R for obvious reasons. I'm the owner of ThinTech Weight Loss here in beautiful New Jersey, which is probably the most underrated and the most misunderstood state in the entire nation. It is a gorgeous spring day right now. By the way, here at ThinTech, people come to us when their inability to lose weight and keep it off affects their health and their quality of life. And so my job is to provide not only the programs, but the tools and the support in order to be able to lose the weight and to keep it off. And I am blessed to see near miracles on a daily basis. So that's just a little bit about me for those of you who are not aware. But as you may tell from the title of this, I am going to speak a little bit about a holiday. So let me wish everyone a happy Passover, especially Jewish people. I actually had the pleasure yesterday of having a Passover Seder. I went to a Passover Seder. Now, some of you are out there saying, well, why did you go to a Passover Seder? Obviously, Passover starts this evening. And the Passover Seder is the meal, right, is the kind of the ritual meal that we do. And here in the United States, we do two of them. Interesting factoid, in Israel, they only do one. But since we are not in Israel, we have to do double. So I went to one yesterday, and it wasn't even Passover yet. But this was done because, obviously, family comes in from far and wide. And it was just easier to do it on a Sunday for my aunt and uncle out on the island, on Long Island. So that's why we engaged like that. But I learned a lot yesterday, and I do want to share some of those things with you. Hopefully they're relevant, but not necessarily. Many years ago, there was a rabbi, his name was Rabbi Hillel, and he was asked by a student, kind of a wise guy, he was asked, can you explain the Old Testament while standing on one foot? And this rabbi said to him, well, what is hateful to you, don't do to your neighbor. It's that simple. All of the rest is basically commentary. Now go and study. Now go and learn something, right? I thought that was a great answer. And the Passover Seder, this ritual meal that we have, is a way that we kind of remember our story, our origin story as Jews. And our origin story is a liberation story. We were liberated from slavery and bondage in Egypt. And we were liberated, as the story goes, by the hand of God. We were able to escape and change that up because God, through his agent Moses, actually visited 10 plagues upon the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh's heart was hard, but he saw the wisdom eventually of letting Moses's people go, right? Let my people go. And so that is kind of the origin story. And what we do every year around this time is we celebrate that liberation. And we do it by having these Passover Seders, and for a week, we do not eat leavened bread. We don't eat bread with yeast in it and some other foods. And the significance of that is because when we finally were freed from slavery, we got out pretty damn quickly. We got out so quickly, in fact, that the bread did not have time to rise. So it became kind of like this large cracker. And we eat this large cracker every year around this time. We're supposed to do that for a week. So this is basically the story of Passover, and it sets the scene for how the Passover meal is done, because the mandate of the Seder is to pass the story on, to tell the story to the whole family and especially to the young people. And that's what we're supposed to do. But here's where it gets interesting. It's not just enough to tell the story kind of casually like I'm doing now. because the word Seder actually means order. So there's an order in which everything is done. Nothing is taken for chance. There's no trust in the storytelling abilities of anyone who's there. You have to do it in a certain way. There's a whole guidebook that goes with it. And so this is what we do. And it's, by the way, uh, it's so easy to digress and to go off on tangents. I don't want to do that too much. But when I say, by the way, the point needs to be made. Those of you who've attended Seders or who've heard about them know about how, I don't know, arduous and exhausting they can be, because traditionally you're supposed to read this book and go over everything for about 2 hours before you can actually eat. And needless to say, young kids are passing out and, crawling under the table and running around, getting into mischief. And, and the adults are trying to tell this story. So most people don't do it that way anymore, but that is the traditional way that it's supposed to be done. And there's an order in which that story is told. I didn't appreciate it until yesterday, I don't think, about how kind of brilliantly it was done. And here's why. The Seder consists of some ritual foods. So, for example, there's a food that's very bitter. And that's to remind us of the bitterness of being slaves in a foreign land. There is a food that's not bitter, it's sweet, but it's a reddish color, to remind us of the bricks that as slaves we were forced to make. There's supposed to be salt water on the table, to remind us of the tears and the sweat that we experienced as slaves. Again, we were under forced labor. I mean, it was kind of a brutal situation many years ago. But here's where the genius comes in, is that it's not just supposed to be a memory. It's not supposed to be told only as a story. And that's why we have to take part in all of these little mini rituals, because it's experiential. Basically, what a Passover Seder is, and I never conceived of it like this before, is it's an immersive, interactive event. The idea is to experience what the slaves experienced way back, I don't know, 4,000 years ago, something like that. Passover Seders have been going on for at least 2,100 years. And I don't recall when, Exodus was, but it was a long ass time ago. So we're supposed to experience it, not just tell it like it happened to someone else. We're supposed to put ourselves in that. And that's really where the genius of it is. And that's why that order is so important, that we do things in a particular way, and everything has significance. And sometimes we just want to eat. But it's nice that it's done this way. This is how culture is created. Culture is created by telling the stories of your people, of how they came to be, of the hardships, by sharing food, especially these certain kind of ritual foods. And what also struck me was that the underlying theme behind everything, why do we have to experience it, as opposed to just remembering it, as opposed to just telling the story by rote? Because the underlying theme is empathy. Obviously, we're supposed to feel what they were feeling, but we're also supposed to take those lessons into the now. We were strangers in a strange land. That means that we should be somewhat compassionate to others, to immigrants, refugees, whatever. I'm not making a political point here, right? There are political considerations that come with, immigration law and policy, etc. But as human beings, we should remember that experience and we should bring it into the now, which is really kind of cool, right? Compassion for other people. I mean, it underlies all the matzah in the world and all the, the brisket and whatever that doesn't equate to empathy or compassion. But that's why it is so ritualistic and so orderly. So that's the ultimate result. Nothing is taken for chance. The challenge of the Passover meal, the Seder, is that there are people of all different knowledge levels, intelligence, and age. So even that's not taken by chance. There are questions that young children are supposed to ask, certain questions. Basically, the theme is, why is this night different than all other nights? What's different? Why do we eat matzah? Why do we recline after we eat? The answer, by the way, is because free men get to recline when they eat it, whereas slaves obviously don't. So it's written down, how do you address each child? Well, some children are pretty smart and savvy. Others are pretty simple. And there's an answer for each one. So not only is it this immersive, interactive event, but it's also this great learning moment. And we're told within this book how to teach it so that everyone could actually hear it and understand it. Whoever created this booklet that we use on this day, on this night, 2 nights here, was genius. I actually looked up who it was. It was a rabbi way back, but it was absolutely genius that he created it in this fashion, that he had this ultimate goal of what he wanted us to accomplish, or what the idea was, right? The idea was to be empathetic and to learn that empathy by immersion, by feeling what the slaves must have felt, because we are far from slavery. As we go through the years, life has gotten much easier. The challenges of eating and oppression, knock on wood, are not the same and won't be. So how then are we able to gain that compassion, that empathy? And it is by this immersion, and it is by feeling what they must have felt, which is lost on most everybody who experiences a Seder, myself included, for 50 some odd years now, right? This is the ultimate idea, and it's just brilliant. Now, what does this have to do with losing weight and getting healthier? I have no idea. I am not Rabbi Hillel. I cannot tell you how this relates. The question is, how does it relate to you? What do you take from it? I'm telling this story now. What is it that can be learned? What is it that can be used? I'm not sure. And I usually like to tie things up in a bow in that same way. And sometimes, instead of reaching and saying, okay, well, we could draw this parallel. Can I make something up? Can I pull something out of where? Absolutely. I have no doubt that I can do that. But sometimes, instead of straining to make those connections, you just got to let it be. So I hope this is worthwhile. Actually, you'll make it worthwhile or not. But this is what I wanted to communicate today. Again, it's a gorgeous day. Get outside. It's as clear as a bell out there. Don't forget your goals for losing weight now that the summer is coming. If you need any help, give me a call. And I am happy to take care of you. And I will speak to everybody next week. Take care.